All right, go ahead.
Okay. Our Father in heaven, we thank thee for this day. We thank thee for the many blessings that thou hast given us. We are thankful for this opportunity that we have to be able to meet and to go over this case study. We ask thy spirit to be with us, to help us guide us, to be able to help us understand and answer the questions to the best of our capabilities. And we say the same in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so the scripture for today. One second. 1 second. All right, so I can't find the exact verse. I know where it is on a book in a book, but not just on my phone. It's just Alma 32, and it says, um, Alma asks them, and he goes, "Do you know what faith is?" Because the people are just so used to, these people. Well, the people that are poor, they're sad because they aren't able to go into the synagogues because they don't make enough money and they're not wealthy enough. And so Alma tells them that you don't need to be in a synagogue to have faith. You don't need to go and worship in this specific word for word repetitive way that they were doing to prove that you have faith, because faith is things which are not seen that you believe in. And I just love that scripture because faith is great. Anyways, okay, we can get started.
Okay. Do you want me to read the questions?
Sure.
Okay. Choose a student to read the following aloud as the group follows along. I guess I'll just read it. So far in this course, we have seen a few common threads and takeaways. Founders matter, experience, passion, and vision shape the business and can make the difference between success and failure. Business plan at the founding stage of a company is a collection of hypotheses. In other words, guesses, startups, or guesses. Startups create value by systematically testing hypotheses and making changes to the plan when the test results indicate a need to change. Early tests tell us a lot about viability of a business and where more information is needed. Previous cases analyzed business models the founders had already chosen. Now we get to see a company at a moment of choice. So that takes care of number 3. And then vote. Which business model option do you favor?
Mine was the traditional.
Anybody else want to vote?
Um, I like the razor. What's it called? Razor and razor blades.
I could see benefits on all of them. Um, but the one that kind of stuck out to me Let me see if I can remember. I think it was the razor and razor blade. And I don't know if I'm making an accurate comparison in this, but it kind of reminds me of printers, where you buy a printer and then you spend a crap ton of money buying the cartridges, which in some cases it's cheaper just to go buy a printer again. That's kind of how I felt that one was, but
Hi, sorry I'm late.
that's okay.
No worries.
So we were in the process of taking a vote on the business model option that you favor.
Oh, okay. So where are we on that?
Number
Just
4.
everybody had just said their thing.
Okay. So in my paper, I chose the third one.
Data
Data
analysis.
analytics.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the reason I chose that one is I thought, even though it is the most risky, it's also the most game-changing. It puts them in the hole farther than they would with the other options, but it also puts them way higher than they would otherwise. But also, I thought it was an interesting idea just because it does kind of change the industry a bit, and I mean, if it was done well, it would also have a lot of cool opportunities to advance science in a lot of ways and do cool things other than just, running a company.
Yeah.
So that was my opinion.
Yeah, my main reason for choosing the traditional strategy is after doing the Excel workbook that we had to do. My traditional showed, after going back and messing with it, it showed that the traditional had one of the highest potentials for free cash flow. But that was my main reason for voting for that.
Yeah. What did you guys think?
I like the razor and razor blade. I think a lot of the goals that they wanted, that plan was kind of fulfilled a lot of the things. And I also did the Excel thing, and yeah, the traditional one did have a lot of return and growth. So did the razor and razor blade one.
Yeah, the one. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you're fine.
Well, I was just saying, from what I did in the Excel workbook, the traditional strategy also allowed for the founders to keep a higher percentage of the value of the company compared to the other ones where they seem to be losing a lot more.
That's true. I did think the first one was by far the safest option. Definitely the least risky, I think, and I think there's a good argument to be made for pursuing an idea that doesn't have a lot of risk, Yeah, I thought first was pretty good. And Vanessa, did we hear your opinion? Did you say anything before I came in?
I did the razor and razor blade because I just thought that it would get their product out there the most. It gives it access, it gives lots of people access to it. But I also kind of felt like it was a little bit like the printer and printer cartridge type thing, of where in some cases it's cheaper just to go buy a new printer than it is to actually buy just the ink cartridges themselves. I know that doesn't technically apply to this, but that's kind of how I felt like it was, is that they're doing a huge markup on the testing supplies themselves, and the initial cost for the machine isn't too high compared to I think some of the other ones. But I just thought what they wanted to do was they wanted to have it mass market, so to be able to make everybody be able to have one. I thought that was probably the best way to get it there. It may be a little bit more risky. It may not pay off as well in the end, but it does what they want to do, of be able to have everybody have access to it.
Sure.
I like that one also because it opened up a kind of like what you mentioned, a larger market for biofuels and agricultural stuff. that was different.
Yeah, honestly, I think each one, like, I think each option had a pretty good fair amount of like pros to it. Um, because I mean, like Tiffany said, I mean, the traditional provides the most reliable numbers, I think. In my opinion, it's the least risky and also does allow them to keep the most of their share. So I think the traditional is good in the sense that you don't have to take any huge risks. You go into an industry, you kind of know how it's operating, and you just compete like normal. I thought second was interesting because it, it fills the market with this product and like does something new and allows all these people to get on. I mean, in my simulations, the numbers weren't as high with the second one, but they would get higher than the first one if it kept going. I don't know if you guys got the same results.
Same, close to that.
What was that?
I think mine were close to yours because that's what mine kind of showed. I think I'd have to look at it again.
Yeah, let me pull. Yeah, mine was like the second one wasn't as impressive, but the line at which it was growing was starting to show more return proportionally to the traditional. But on the second hand, I thought the second one does have the risk of if you have a lot of new adopters, what if what if a lot of them get the product then realize it's not for them and they don't continue to buy accessories and stuff because they got it so cheap, they're not that invested into it. I think you do run the risk of having a lot more customer drop off. But if you don't, it works really well. So it's kind of a tough one.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, should we move on to the next question?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, give each person who voted a chance to share why he or she did. If the choice is left without someone voting for it, discuss as a group the pros and cons of the choice as well. Specifically for each alternative, discuss the following. Well, it sounds like we've already kind of done these. The number of potential customers, which customers would be expected to pay for the product, who the competitors are, and their likely response, the founder's goals, and the investor's goals.
It's pretty well covered.
Yeah, I think. Anybody want to add anything? I think we kind of covered the reason why.
Did you guys talk about competition very much before I came in?
No.
No, not a lot.
Okay, I feel like we covered pretty much the other points, at least from what I've seen. Should we just talk about that then?
Yeah, we can talk about competition.
Okay. So the conclusion I came into, I don't know if I'm on the money with this, but I felt like obviously the competition is the strongest with the traditional option. But they also have a significant edge over their competition because they have a superior product that they can sell for cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
One of the concerns I had with the traditional competition is that you do have a better product and you do have a better shot at getting a lot of market share that they won't be able to get as fast. But the one thing that concerned me about that is that you're competing against a bunch of industry giants that have tons and tons and tons of money. And they could play, there's a chance that they could play dirty to kind of crush you. And that's, hopefully that wouldn't happen, but that is, I think, a threat that you could potentially face in the first option. They could severely undercut their prices and operate at a loss for a while just so that you don't get share, or, they could do all kinds of things. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think that's a major concern. I noticed that too. It talked about them doing that to another company as well.
Yeah, so, okay. Well, so there's number one then. What about number two? You guys have any thoughts?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, as far as the competition goes, it doesn't seem like they really have a lot of other companies to compete with because they're just kind of starting this whole new thing. I mean, it sounded like there might have been a couple because some people were doing the DNA testing stuff, but not a lot of them were. I don't know. I don't think that competition was really a huge concern for them in the other two. I think it was more financial concerns for the other two companies without our ideas, strategies, whatever they are.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, kind of like what I said before. Like it would be lower risk, like the competition would be lower because they are opening different parts of the market up for like agricultural things.
It's almost like they're competing against their customers, because if their customers don't buy the extra things, then that model may flounder. But obviously, it's not what the question is talking about. But.
Well, there's also kind of a little bit of competition. I mean, not necessarily competition, but when it's like the personalized medicine idea that you could have this in a doctor's office and they could run it and then find a medication, especially with cancer patients. You can find a medication that can be custom tailored to cancer patients. That that would help save a lot of lives of people who are affected by cancer. But then it's kind of a little bit of a flip side of where you go, do I really want everybody to know exactly what genetic diseases I could possibly be prone to, because that can raise your insurance rates. That can do all of that kind of stuff. So it's kind of running a little bit of a gamble of having this, and it may become something that becomes out of style because, or not an interest in it because it just ends up causing too many problems. So
Right.
that kind of can be it's not, I guess it's not necessarily competition, but I guess you could be competing with people's interest in it and the desire to use it in
Yeah, it's a
this way.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I guess I think that kind of probably covers it then, right? Like, strongest competition is the first option.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, that's also the most predictable. I feel like they're potentially equipped to fight against that competition because it's a market that's established and known, and they can study trends and stuff like that. So I mean, with the other two options, you kind of go into more unpredictable, risky territory for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so using a polling tool, which we have just decided we're just going to say, allows students to vote to see the overall results. Go through the following questions. Using the Excel model you created before class, answer the following questions individually, then compare the answers as a group. A, if we increase EBIAT
Well,
slash...
we might need to write these down and then talk about them.
Okay, well, I'll just read it first.
Okay.
And hold everything else equal, time to pay back increases, decreases, or remains the same.
Okay.
What does EBIAT mean? I must have missed that.
Earnings before interest and taxes.
Oh, okay.
That's right?
Yeah.
EBIT, yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense.
We always just call the EBIT without the A.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay, did everybody come to an answer?
Yeah, I have my answer.
Yes.
Okay, who wants to go first?
I can. I have it decreases payback time.
Anybody else disagree with that?
Yeah, seems about right.
I agree with the answer.
Great.
Okay, so once everybody has responded to the question without help from anyone else, compare answers. Okay, well, we got that. And then discuss until the group settles on a single response. I think we came up with a single response. Okay, so if NOA/sales increases, cash flow increases, decreases, or remain the same.
Okay.
What does NOA stand for again?
Net operating assets.
Oh, okay.
So it's like working capital plus fixed assets added together.
Okay, everybody have an answer, or do they want another minute?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Okay. It would increase.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm getting.
Mm-hmm.
I would say increase also.
Okay.
Okay, so once everyone has responded to the question without help from anyone else, compare answers, decrease or discuss until we get a single response. We've already gotten a single response. Okay, and then on the curve below, so does everybody have it open?
I have it, but the image is broken on mine.
And my
so
image is broken too, so I really have no idea what this is supposed to be.
Yeah, my image is broken too.
Okay, skip.
Okay, we'll skip that one. And we all came to the same conclusion. The image is broken. Okay, so discuss as a group what strategies have we seen to flatten or lengthen the cash flow and the cash flow curve. Specifically, try to draw the cash flow curves for Dr. John's products, Rent the Runway, and Dropbox as they were described in the cases. Just make a rough guess as to the shapes of each of these cash flow curves.
Oh, geez. I don't even know if I can miss.
That was a long time ago.
I feel like this case is a lot harder.
There's a lot more analyzation.
Yeah,
Sure.
there's a lot more to it.
Well, so I can't speak towards Dr. John's because I had a rough start to the semester and I didn't do that case.
And I don't think we ever talked about cash flow. And I don't remember talking about cash flow with the other ones either.
I think it's why it's a rough guess. You're just supposed to kind of go off what you kind of think it would be.
Okay. Well, so okay. I'm trying to remember. Did they spend a lot of money in Rent the Runway? Was there a lot of like upfront investment? Do you guys remember?
They burned through their cash way quick because they were like ready to ask for more money.
Yeah,
Right.
after a year they were ready, or 12 months or 11 months or something, they were ready to ask for more money. I don't remember the initial amount, but they had to buy a lot of inventory, and so that's where it burned through their cash flow.
That's right. But on the other hand, didn't they get going pretty quickly? It was like within a year they were operating and like growing.
Yeah, it was within. I think they came up with the concept in like September, October, November of the previous year, and by that next season, which like Christmas holiday season, they were up and running.
Yeah, with them, I kind of envision like a curve that dips a little bit, but starts climbing pretty quickly. Not like exponential gains, but pretty reliable improvements. I don't know if I'm describing that very well.
I think they had reliable improvements, but I think every season they kind of had to take a big dip into their cash flow because they had to purchase new product. So I would say
true.
it more looked like they climbed and then they fell and then they climbed and they fell because of the way that their inventory had to be.
Yeah, so they would have a higher NOA because of all the inventory they would have to be buying. So they would definitely have a nice dip in their little chart thing.
Okay, that makes sense. I can.
And like with Dr. John's, I think their cash flow is pretty steady. Because like that case was more about coming to a conclusion on whether he wanted to sell the company, he wanted to keep the company going just as it was, or whether he wanted to license the product to a larger corporation or a larger player in the market. So I don't think he had too much problem with his cash flow because I don't remember him trying to seek more investors, unless I'm not remembering the case right.
I don't remember. That was a long time ago. I know it was like 3 weeks ago, but my brain doesn't work that long.
And then with Dropbox, I don't remember them going for more investors.
Yeah, they would. I would imagine
remember.
Dropbox would still have a pretty high asset cost just because of all of their upfront cost of all the equipment. But I think they also had a pretty high EBIT. And I think they grew pretty quickly. So I think theirs would kind of just be like a Nike sign kind of thing.
Good description.
Yeah. And I think they were another one that grew pretty quickly also because it's not like they had to buy inventory. It's not like they had to do that. I mean, there was mostly of just getting it out there and having people use it. And I think they were pretty effective about doing that. So I would agree it was like a Nike sign.
I think with them, you're likely to see definitely like an exponential bend because they're a software company, so they don't have to worry that much about physical distribution. They don't have really high overhead costs. They have a big upfront cost in developing the product.
And that's like it for the most part.
Yeah, they have a big upfront cost, and then there's just the cost of like maintaining their employees and stuff. But there's no huge investments that they have to continually be making. Kind of like Rent the Runway, where they have to continually buy inventory. I mean, Dropbox, you just put it there, and once it takes off,
they have to do minor updates and things like that, minor expansions, but not drastic ones.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So next, describe to each other what would happen to Dr. John's if they decided to build an independent company rather than get acquired. What activities would John have to do differently? What impact in the cash flow curve would these activities have to flatten or steepen, shallow or deepen, increase or decrease time to pay back? Well, I think if he wanted to go to the traditional route of just his normal expansion rather than I think he went with licensing. I can't remember. That he would have had to work on manufacturing. He would have had to work on advertising. So that would have taken a big hit to their cash flow of trying to get those activities up and going.
Yeah, it definitely would have shallowed it. I think he would have still been profitable, but it definitely would have taken a big dive as he decided to do that. And he would have a continued asset cost because they're building toothbrushes. It's not like Dropbox where you just kind of buy everything and you're good to go. he'd have a little longer climb out of there as they worked to pay that off. But I don't really know what their margin was or anything, so it is kind of hard to get an exact idea.
Well, they were also very small in the market. I think it was like 0.2% is what the market that they covered, if I remember correctly, where the other ones dominated the market and everything else.
Yeah. But I mean, that was after a year or two.
Yeah. Okay, discuss the same for Rent the Runway. If the founders of Rent the Runway had been able to convince the dress designers to retain ownership of the dresses, what impact would have led to the cash flow curve? It would have drastically increased if they didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah, if they didn't have to pay for the dresses and buy them, it would have made a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because that was their main cost. I mean, they would have had a very high cash flow.
Well, their payback time would have been significantly shortened.
Yeah,
because of the increase in cash flow.
Yeah.
Okay, what decisions did Drew Houston make in Dropbox that favorably impacted the cash flow curve? Trying to think of that case.
Was he the one who only had like 6 employees, or was that Dr. John?
He didn't have 6, but he didn't have that many. I think he had
9. 9 is what's sticking out in my head.
So, well, yeah, I had like 8 and 6 in my head.
Huh.
But
it was less than a dozen.
I think his small employee force made a difference on overhead.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely improves overhead. I do think also, I feel like he stuck with a basic concept and he didn't try to blow it up too much because, I mean, part of the study was like, should we move into Dropbox for business? And should we scale it up this and scale it up that? And I mean, we know now that Dropbox eventually did do those things, but in the beginning, he played it pretty conservatively, I think.
Yeah.
He built a very safe product that he was sure that would reach a lot of people, and he just focused on making the base features of it good and reliable. I think if you tried to scale too much in the beginning, they would have spent a lot more money.
I agree.
I also think that, I think he made a good decision in that he was essentially creating a product that kind of already existed, but it existed in much more convoluted, complicated, harder to use forms that were also really only distributed to big businesses or small business, whatever. But he kind of, I feel like he saw a competition and said, I'm going to make this, but for everyone. I'm going to make it accessible to the student, to the grandma, to your dad, to your sister, like whatever. And I felt like that helped him too because he penetrated a really huge market.
That's one thing that's always stuck out with me about entrepreneurship is I've always felt like it was take something that may already exist and apply and make it better to make it improvement to you. That was not great English. But take an existing something and then just make it so that it works better in your life. And that's kind of what I felt like he did with Dropbox. It's like he had the idea, somebody else may have had the idea, but he thought, wow, I can really take this and make it more useful to like the general population rather than anybody that's just working for a big corporation.
Yeah, I agree. He saw a problem in his own life and he set out to solve it.
Yes, you picked out much better words of description in English in that one for me. Yeah, I just can't even think today. Okay, so now let's look at the choices of GenapSys. I'm not even going to say that right. Has from a cash flow standpoint for each business model option under consideration, compare the following. The net present value, if some of the options have similar net present values, which is riskier? Is it advisable to take additional risk for a similar net present value?
I'm so bad with all these terms and numbers and stuff.
Was net present value in the Excel sheet or is that in the case?
I don't even remember.
Here it shows it in Excel.
Does it? Okay.
Didn't it
So the
talk
N-
about
Oh
how
yeah. Okay.
huh?
didn't it talk about how like with the discount rate, if it was like higher, you know, like that's riskier? Is that anything related to that?
I'm not sure. Okay, here I found the net present value on the sheet.
Oh, what page is it on?
It's on financing implications. It's at the top. So if you reset it to the default numbers, the
Oh,
initial
you're on
value,
the Excel sheet. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
The traditional and the razor and blade already, I mean, with the default numbers, they have a really similar NPV. Traditional starts at 37,751, and razor and blade starts at 35. Data analytics has quite a bit more. It's at rounded up to 50 grand for NPV.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can. Let me try something. Okay, I think I have an answer.
Okay.
Um, so it's saying which one is riskier if they have similar NPVs. So we already see the answer to that with the default numbers in the first two because they're already almost the same NPV. So I think
So razor,
huh?
would the razor one be the riskier one?
I think in theory, yeah. Because traditional, you dip down a little bit, but you pay it off pretty quickly, and then you have a pretty consistent, reliable upward trend. It doesn't make like exponential gains, but it increases at a reliable rate. Whereas the second one, you dip farther in debt. Well, you dip about the same amount in debt, but you stay in that debt for several more years than you do with the first one. And that one curves upward at a more exponential rate, but it is riskier in the sense that you're in the hole for longer. And I changed some numbers and I tried to get the third one to a similar NPV. I didn't get it to like 35, but I got it to 40. And honestly, the curve looks about the same as it was before. It dips down really low. And then in 2019, it starts to yield returns. And then it starts shooting way up, just like it does in the original. So I think the risk kind of remains the same with the NPVs. It's the second one's a little more risky, third one's a lot more risky.
I agree.
Yep. Just depends how much risk you want to take.
And I mean, I think
Right.
if they have similar risks, it's not that much of a difference. I don't know. I would probably go with the one that was a little bit riskier because sometimes the more you're willing to risk, the bigger your rate of return. Not in every case, but sometimes it's that way.
Yeah. If it's successful. The problem with high risk
Yeah.
investment.
Okay. How will GenapSys, I'm just going to keep pushing that, raise funds to support each option, and any option clearly more attractive to investors? Support your answers in the discussion.
I do not remember the answer to this. Doesn't remember how they.
Don't remember.
One was they
either.
were gonna, for the DNA, no, what the third option, they were going to sell test something. I can't remember.
Was that when they were talking about social media?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I think I might have an answer for the third one at least.
Okay.
What is it?
It doesn't say much except for near the end. It's like, while this ambitious model had the greatest potential reward, it carried high risk. It said it required significant R&D investments and created large overhead costs. So management wondered if the time and financial requirements would be too much for traditional investors. It says we would need investors with deep pockets who want to go for gold and who recognize the massive opportunity that lies in owning such large amounts of data. Investors would have to be patient and comfortable with the risk. It doesn't say much beyond that. Earlier, it says how they would make money once their model was operating, like they would derive revenues from test royalties, licensing and charging a subscription fee. So that's kind of a way to make money while it's going. But as far as raising money goes, they don't really have a solution except for go for broke with big cat investors.
But I don't think it really talks about it a lot.
Yeah. Well, I guess we could discuss hypotheticals. Like, which one do you guys think would they have an easiest time with investors on?
I think it also depends on the type of investors they're after. I think probably the traditional one would be the easiest because it's not as high risk as the others. So you'd be able to get investors that way, but at the same time, overall its return won't be as high as the other two options. But so I think your lower risk investors will go for option one.
Yeah, well, I think low risk is something that a lot of investors like.
Yeah.
For shareholders and investors, low risk is, it's music to their ears. But you're right, there are a lot of investors that go for higher risk opportunities. I imagine those are they probably have more money than most traditional investors do, and they're probably more sought after, I would imagine. So I bet there's a larger amount of investors that would be more comfortable with the first option.
Yeah, it would definitely be easier to find investors for that than saying.
Well, everybody wants to make their money back. They don't want to lose it, so.
Exactly.
Okay. So for each option, how much of the company will the founders have to give up to reach the goal? I don't think I remember
this one right on the Excel sheet. Did you do it? Anybody else? This part?
I don't think I got this part right.
Yeah, I'm lost on this part.
And I couldn't get those videos to load that they had. so I just kind of winged it.
Yeah.
I had it, my numbers were for the traditional strategy, the founders, well, I put what they were able to have. The founders would be able to keep 67% of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And for the razor and razor blades, they'd be able to keep 64%. And then the data analytics strategy, they would get to keep 0.01%.
Okay.
Those were the numbers I got. I don't know if I did it right at all, but
I don't think I did it right at all.
Let's see.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at it.
Guys, I'm gonna confess something. I took
You sure you want to do it live?
Well, I took this class last semester, but I ended up deferring out of the semester just because things got like way too busy.
And I
life.
did the same thing, so don't feel bad.
So I actually did this case last semester. So I do not have this particular sheet fresh in my head.
Okay, so put yourself in the shoes of Esfandiapur and Rastagar and the investors. You must decide as a group which business model you will choose. Be ready to explain this choice in your post-discussion write-up.
Okay, so we have to agree on one.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody just from the outset that feels like changing their mind after we've discussed it? Or do we all feel committed to our
I'm not committed to anything.
choices? I'm not that committed to the data strategy. In fact, most of the reason I chose the data strategy is because, I mean, the money is one thing, which would be the most important thing if you're the business people. But for me, it was kind of like the interesting scenario of having all kinds of data that could be readily available to the masses that could be exchanged and used. I think if it was handled ethically and morally, that could be a really big boon to science. But that's not really what the case is asking about. It's asking about financials. So if we're talking about that, then I could easily change my answer to 1 or 2.
Well, the traditional one's going to be the safest, and I think in the long run is going to be the most profitable, unless I'm wrong. So
well,
I think. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I'm fine with going with traditional. I mean, I don't have an emotional attachment to any of them, so.
You're not ready to die for this?
No, I'm not ready to die for this. I'm on so much cold medication that it's like I feel like I'm in that show Up, and it's like, oh, there's something shiny over there, squirrel. You know, I can't even think.
Yeah, it's like I just got over a cold. It's the worst.
But you should have heard me yesterday. I had like the most sexy manly voice possible, and every time I like tried to breathe, I would cough. So it was going great yesterday.
Oh, that's rough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I guess we'll try to wrap this up as soon as we can then. Madeline, did you have any thoughts on what you want to go with?
Yeah, I guess my opinion did kind of change instead of going to like the razor to traditional, because I don't know, I was doing like pros and cons. Like the traditional is lower risk and it is more predictable compared to the razor. So financially, it's better to go with traditional. So I think it kind of changed to that business model.
Okay, we could go with that because I guess at the end of the day, it just comes down to which horse do you want to back? Like, which risk are you more comfortable with? Because the risk with the first one is the big boys crushing you because they are really entrenched in the competition and they have a bunch of money. And the risk with the second one is that it just doesn't end up working like you wanted it to. You don't retain a lot of customers. So it's, I guess between those is just kind of like which one are you more prepared to fight against. So if we want to decide on traditional,
I'm good with traditional.
Great.
Anybody else disagree?
No?
Okay. So basically, the traditional, we all chose traditional because it's the safest
Let's
risk.
summarize this.
Okay.
And I didn't time it this time. I forgot.
That's okay.
But we can guesstimate it if you want because
well,
started it.
I think we're about 40 minutes into it.
Yeah, we started at 4:43.
Yeah.
No, 4:33.
I don't have the brain capacity to summarize it, so if somebody else could, that would be awesome.
Have we all done a summary so far?
No,
I haven't done one in our group, but I've done one with like me and Vanessa.
Okay.
So, I mean, I can do it if no one else has.
Sure. I mean, I don't care. I could do it too. I don't really care. Just.
All right, I'll just do it so we can call it good. So in our discussion, we talked about the different options that were available because they're faced with basically if they want to follow the traditional path, if they want to expand their market into different industries, or if they want to go into selling data, basically selling what's the data that's collected from the machines. And due to the risks involved and focusing mostly just on financials and not really looking at more of the, not too many more of the details of the business plans, we've decided that the lowest risk investment for them would be to go with the traditional one. This would allow them to have a steady incline. When we look at the free cash flow chart, it allows them to just kind of steadily increase after they are recovered from their main drop in the beginning, where the other ones tended to go farther and take a little longer to recover. And we weren't quite sure if we would be able to get investors for those more risky situations. Also, traditional allowed the founders to keep the most of their company. Is that good? Does anyone have anything to add?
I think that's perfect.
All right.
Cool.